Boys! Hey, boys! Hey! Boys! They don't want to come over.
If we hurt my rents, they'd be on top of it. It's okay. I thought you could call. We'll see. We'll see them at the concert. No, they're gonna see something over here. Somebody will have a hat or something, and they will. They're cats. Yeah. Okay, everyone. We're gonna begin the program now. Thank you all for being here. This is so exciting. This is our second carbon farm tour, and we're here to highlight the work that we're doing here in the Northeast with our Carbon Farm Network, and also the work of Stacie Chavez and the Climate Beneficial Fiber Pool out on the West Coast. So this is really exciting that so many people are so interested in this work. I've had such a privilege to work with both of these individuals that I just want to read their, I want to tell you about them, okay? So in 2009, Stacie Chavez, along with her husband Skip, began breeding and showing Wakaya, sorry. Sometimes I said that. I know. Wakaya alpacas. Their farm, Skyridge Alpacas, is located in Terrebonne, Oregon. Stacie has extensive knowledge in sourcing, sorting, and consolidating fiber materials. This experience was a perfect fit for creating the distribution chain that would be needed to collect, grade, bale, and sell alpaca fiber nationally. In late 2015, Stacie Chavez, along with Lynn Edens, purchased Imperial Yarn and has grown the company into a national brand. Today, Imperial Yarn continues to grow into a brand known for natural fibers that are raised in the U.S. and then manufactured in the USA. In 2018, with the help of Rebecca Burgess, Executive Director of Watershed, Edens and Chavez became a brand focused on marketing only goods made from climate beneficial verified fibers. The Climate Beneficial Fiber Pool was created in 2020. The Fiber Pool makes it possible to work with brands that are focused on traceable soil-to-soil circular systems. And that's a big theme today that we're going to be talking about, is this idea of circularity. Thank you, Stacie. You're so thrilling.
Thank you all for being here. This touches my heart
so deeply to see people interested in what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And joining the team.
The fight.
Our herd. You're joining our herd.
Absolutely. And Gibson, who I work with all the time, Gibson Durnford works with the Carbon Farm Network to provide planning and technical assistance to farms, helping them develop and implement their carbon farm plan. In addition to his work with the Carbon Farm Network, Gibson directs the Watershed Agricultural Council's East of the Hudson Agricultural Program. In his role with the council, Gibson is responsible for working with farmers, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations to protect drinking water quality, improve farm operations, and preserve working agricultural landscapes in the East of Hudson watershed. Important work. He administers the planning, design, and implementation of conservation practices on watershed farms, as well as the council's outreach and agricultural education programs. Gibson is also actively involved with urban agricultural projects in New York City and serves on the NRCS Technical Committee for Urban Agriculture. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I'm standing here so that it feels like you're looking at me, but I know you're really.
Here they come.
This is
Exactly.
So yeah. I would also like to thank Little Creek for letting us all be here today. It's a really incredible farm, so we're very grateful.
Lynn Edens, who's back here.
Lynn.
So
She
anyway,
gets
welcome
a
to the
big
farm.
thank you.
As you know, we're in North Salem, New York, which is the northern part of Westchester County. The county's a really interesting place because downstate we have really dense population, urban, suburban, and then this part of the county is a lot less populated. But there's intense pressure on this area. Land values are very high and we're losing farmland at a really fast rate. So being able to be on a farm like this is really, really special and have a big impact. This historically, kind of to put us in place and give you a sense of the farm, historically this was all dairy, dating back 200 years until probably the 1980s. So this is where New York got its milk from. You know, produced on farms. There were trains that would take it down to the city, and that's where all of our dairy products came from this area. In the 1980s, this farm actually transitioned to an orchard. You can see, those of you who came this way can see how successful that is. And also a vineyard, which, you know, we have a lot of vineyards in the small vineyards now, North Fork, Finger Lakes, up around the Great Lakes. But in 1980, to put a vineyard here was really, really inventive. And so this would have all been vines and apple trees. And then it lasted for about 30 years as that, and then Little Creek took it over, and it's become actually one of the biggest based alpaca farms, and you know, one of the most important alpaca farms in the country. So we're also in New York City Watershed. If we go about a mile in that direction, show of hands, people from the city who came up. Yeah. So when it rains here, very shortly after, it's going to go through the grass into the streams, filter through the soil, and the reservoir is right there, and it's coming out of our tap, and what we're brushing our teeth with in a very short order of time. So also really important to have the farmland as part of the watershed. So that's kind of a brief. We're going to go through. The farm does some really amazing stuff to protect both water quality and to implement climate beneficial practices, and as we kind of walk around the farm, we'll go through some of those. But obviously the stars are right behind me, so I'm going to let Stacie give you an introduction to them. And
Are these teenage boys?
Yes.
Yep, that's what I thought. So the llama's in here as a guardian, so a protector. And so these are all teenage boys. So you saw them jump in the air. That's part of their development. They're developing those chest muscles. Why alpaca? Soft on the environment. They have a padded foot like a dog with toenails rather than a hoof. Their fiber is naturally hypoallergenic, antimicrobial, and it breathes a little bit better than wool. I like to make everybody vision a brick wall. Alpaca fiber and wool are both medullated fiber. What the heck does that mean? It has air pockets. Wool looks like a brick, again, back to the brick wall. Wool has the bricks are solid and the mortar is the air pockets. In alpaca, it's the opposite. The air pockets are bricks, the mortar is solid surface. So it conducts heat a little bit better. It breathes better, and it also holds in. I happen to think, maybe I'm a little biased, I do have sheep and I have alpaca, but they're amazing. I call them an advanced species. That's of my own making. Soft on the earth, very efficient eaters. They don't require, believe it or not, an alpaca eats about a bale of hay a month. They have a 3-compartment stomach instead of 3 stomachs. And so what goes in, very little comes out, and what comes out you can throw right on the garden. You don't have to compost it, although we do. So they're amazing. They're an amazing animal. Lifespan 20 years. Gestation 335 days, and a lot of times they go to 365. Yeah, it takes forever. When I started breeding sheep, I was like, what, the sheep are due? Because it was 159 days, which was just about half. And plus they have twins a lot, so you make a lot of sheep in a short amount of time.
Thank you, Stacie.
Oh.
No, I mean, yeah, that's great, because you can talk more when
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, there's more.
There's more. But I think we'll...
So climate smart agriculture, right? That's really the goal. And there are 3 pieces of that when we think about it. The first is making farms as productive as possible, right? If we have a farm, we want it to produce as much as it possibly can in the most environmentally friendly way. Farms also need to be profitable. Only profitable farms can really afford to engage in environmental conservation. So we have to make sure that we have farms doing everything we can to make them economically viable. And that's the best way we can make sure we have farms moving forward. So that's the first piece. The second piece is climate resiliency. Climate is changing. Park Slope had 4 feet of water a couple weeks ago. This is just our world. So we need to do everything we can to protect farms from those changes and to armor them every way that we can. And that can mean a lot of different things. And there are a lot of things that we have to consider in that. Obviously, it's extreme weather events. It's increased, and for our area, it's going to be a lot wetter and we're getting a lot more, really, really intense storms. That's just what we're expecting, and it's going to be hotter. And that brings with it a whole bunch of other issues. We get increased pest issues, right? If it's hotter and wetter, we have to worry about parasites in the field more. We also have insects like ticks that are migrating up and are bringing some new diseases that we have to worry about for the animals. We can get more invasive species popping up. So there are a lot of challenges, and those challenges are unique to here. If Stacie were to talk about the stuff she's dealing with in Oregon, totally different. It's fires and drought, right? We're very, very different. We're flooding and extreme weather. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is reducing our greenhouse gas emissions as much as we can and locking as much greenhouse gas into the soil as we can. So I know they're great, but when we are here, we actually have all kinds of amazing things going on that are maybe not jumping out to you right away. So as we look at it this way, ignore the charismatic megafauna as we will, right? But what do we see out here? Anyone?
Grass.
See a lot of grass, right? We got a lot of grass, and grass is wonderful. First, it's alpaca feed. And if we're able to grow food on the farm, we don't have to import it. So we're not bringing food with carbon miles on it, and we're actually recycling nutrients. The grass is growing, they're eating it, and we're putting it right back here when we do compost, when we fertilize the soil. So as just feed, that's amazing. But I'm going to sneak in behind. Right, grass isn't just sort of the great stuff that we have on top. We have all kinds of other good stuff going on. So really, really diverse soil, and really complex soil food webs and life webs. We've got the roots, obviously, but in here we're going to have fungi, bacteria that are doing all kinds of cool decomp stuff. They're also locking gases, nitrogen out of the atmosphere. So we've that going on. We've got bigger, soil renovating, earthworms, insects, right? So a really, really complex system. So we've got the grass on top, super useful, and then we've got all the stuff going on underneath. And all of this that grows, right, organic material, carbon, it's staying in the ground. So as it grows, it's growing up here, but it's also growing down here, and that's putting that organic matter into the soil where we want it to stay. So really, really great. Yeah.
Show people back
Oh, sorry guys. I let it rain dirt on you. Right, and we can look at this and know that it's healthy soil because it's got nice clumps, which usually means there's a lot of biological activity. But then when we see all I think if we dig in here not so deep, we're going to have lots of earthworms. Yeah, we've got lots of earthworms. So really, really good at pulling, right, back to biology. I'm sorry, I know you were hoping those days were done, but CO2 out of the atmosphere, photosynthesis turns into sugar, brings it down to the roots, stores it there, leaks out a little bit, feed the bacteria and the fungi. Really happy ecosystem down here that we kind of forget about. So grass, kind of amazing. Lots of smart people are trying to figure out ways to pull CO2 out of the atmosphere. It's right here. It's right there. So it's doing that. The other thing that it's doing is this is the best water filter that we could ask for, right? New York City would love to have as much pasture as they could have in the watershed, which is why we get to work with these farms. They want to make sure that this stays. So when it rains, hits here, filters through, the grass slows it so it's not all running, it's not dirt, and it's going to go from here into, there's a stream right here. So this is a huge water filter, air filter, carbon sequestration, machine at work. And the animals are kind of, I know they're really cute, they're kind of not the most important piece that's going on right here. Some other really amazing things that may not sort of jump out, right? This row here, really old-fashioned idea to put in windbreaks or hedgerows, right? Farmers didn't like them, 50s, 60s, 70s, because it wasn't productive land. They didn't like them. Trees shade out grass, they're not growing. Turns out we should absolutely have them. Gives us a chance to have trees, big carbon sink, right? Blocks away carbon. There's roots that are putting carbon into the soil, and we get all this sort of woody growth. So we have a lot of biomass in there. Also, again, locking away carbon because those roots are going down. It's beautiful, but it's also this amazing habitat for wildlife, pollinators, beneficial insects. Lets the insects can live in there. They can come out here, graze on the bugs that we might not want around, and then head back in there. Same with birds. Also creates great wildlife corridors throughout the farm. So we've got this. Again, really amazing. Over here, is kind of doesn't look like a lot. This is actually a wetland, and the farm has done a really good job of restoring this wetland. We have an incredible invasive species problem in Westchester. Vines take over very quickly. Multi-floral rose and barberry, two sort of landscape plants that escape and kind of take over. So did a great job of removing those invasives. We still have a lot of mugwort, which is another invasive, but battles as we can. But it's restored it into a really healthy wetland and getting a lot of that stuff out of there. So important, because wetland soils lock away a lot of organic matter. We do not want to disturb those. They're one of the biggest single carbon sinks that we can have, so we want to protect wetland soils as much as we possibly can. Again, another great habitat for pollinators and beneficials. And disturbing them, if we do disturb them, it releases a whole lot of nitrogen as well as CO2. So we want to protect those. And then beyond that, where we have the trees, a really good job of going through there, cleaning out a lot of the sort of woody invasive vines that were harming those trees, and restoring that tree stand. Again, sort of simple things, and when you look at it, you're like, yeah, it's beautiful, but also hard at work to do all the climate beneficial stuff that we wanted to do. And the other thing that I would point out that is here but not here, I mentioned earlier development pressure, right? This would make a whole bunch of really lovely subdivision houses that are all going to be emitting. So that preserved farmland is a really critical piece of what we want to do in the watershed, and also for our carbon farm plans. We want to make sure that farmland stays farmland. It's just producing so much less greenhouse gas and is a place for us to actually put a lot of carbon into the soil. So the thing that is not here is also really critical, and in this area especially, keeping big open fields like this is really important, and we love to work with them. Interesting, people were really excited to get close to the alpaca when they were near the fence. I see a little more space here, just pointing that out. Yeah. So one of the ways that we can really build up organic matter and carbon in the soil, and I'm going to use this interchangeably, so if I don't, basically the same thing, is through applying compost, right? So grass comes from over there, harvested, or the animals eat it. They poop, it's collected, put in the bins, right? It'll build up when this is full. It will go to the composting area on that side of the farm, in very big piles where it will be composted. And we compost it for a couple of reasons. This is obviously kind of a little bit of everything mixed in. It also may have some parasites in it, so we want to get it over there, build it into big piles where it's going to start to heat up and cook. And the bacteria and fungi are really going to get excited, and they're going to, biological activity, it's going to bring it up to like 140 degrees. And we're going to do that a couple times, 3 times. We're going to go in with a tractor, turn it over, it'll heat up again, turn it over again, and it'll heat up again. So through those times, anything that might be alive, either weed seed, which we also might have in here, or parasites, it'll cook off, so we don't have to worry about them, and then it's safe. And then we'll let it sit for a couple months until it's time to spread it on the field. In the meantime, the farm will go around and soil sample all the fields, a bunch of different soil plugs, send them off, and we'll get back how much nutrient they need on the fields. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium being the ones we're mostly concerned about, but we also check how much organic matter is in the field. And at that point, we'll figure out how much manure. We'll make something called a nutrient management plan, which tells them exactly how much of the finished compost they can spread on each one of the fields and how often, because we don't want to put too much on. It's not going to get absorbed and it will kind of get wasted. And also, because we're in the watershed, we really don't want to do that, because if we put too much on, it'll run off and get in the waterways, and that'll cause a problem with phytoplankton growing, right? They'll get excited about the phosphorus in the waterways, and the reservoir will have a little phosphorus or phytoplankton bloom, so that's not good. So we'll give them the plan. They'll spread it and keep records, and we'll come back and do that every 3 years, right? So we're sampling the finished compost, and then we're sampling the fields, and we're keeping track of everything. So it's really great, and it's an amazing way to build up, and it's amazing how fast. So this is kind of the raw material, and I'm going to make a little bit of a mess, but you can kind of see, right? We'll make some piles. Not at all blended. We got straw with urine. We've got the poop, kind of a mess. You could spread that right on the field, but again, has some problems with it. So once it starts to cook, and we've done a couple, this is probably after one turn, you can see, kind of, right, it's starting to become a little indistinct. There's still visible hay, right, we can still kind of see some color, but it's definitely blending a lot more, and we're getting breakdown. These sort of big straw fibers are breaking down the bacteria, and the fungi really love to break that up, and they'll take that apart. And then, you know, as we kind of come to the end and this is finished and ready to spread, we just have this really, really lovely dirt that you could drop a seed in and it would just start sprouting like Jack and the Beanstalk style. So kind of the different processes that we go through, and then this is the stuff that we're going to get out on the field, and it's going to be black gold is for the alpaca farmers here is often what you guys refer to it as. So this is kind of the process from how do we get to the finished product, we get on the field, and then that just helps, you know, it either encourages plant growth, which is above and below ground, or it just gets incorporated into the soil and makes also feeds the earthworms, and will also feed the soil fungi and bacteria too. So really, really awesome. Again, farmers get excited about poop. And now I will turn you back to Stacie. Perfect. You guys want to head in the barn? And again, not as exciting what you're about to see as what's here. You're going to be confused by it, but I assure you this is the good stuff.
I always like to point out, pretty commercial herd, commercially focused. You don't see a lot of color, although a lot of brands we're working with are asking for more natural headers. And so we're starting to have a little bit more color and a little bit more color. White's wonderful because we can do anything with it. A lot of our alpaca we do blend with wool. Alpaca is a lovely, lovely fiber, but its dirty secret is it lacks memory. And so wool provides memory, and wool provides lock for the yarn. It makes it puffier. Very technical term. The other thing I wanted to add, and I don't know if I didn't hear Gibson say it, but the other beautiful thing about alpacas is they are browsers, not grazers, which means they eat a little bit of everything. When we had a open range herd in Oregon, and I got to see, I mean, they ate bark, they ate tree leaves, they ate shrub bushes, they ate the grasses, but they didn't destroy anything because they moved from one thing to the other, and they got a little bit of nutrients from everything. They are, I mentioned the lifespan, I mentioned, we'll let them nurse for 6 months. At that point, we wean them. Not a fun day. Probably louder as we shoot. It was so loud at my house about a month ago. It's trying to think of what else I can share with you. I love them. I like to think they're more cat-like than dog-like. You saw, I tried to call them. When did they come? When I turned my back to them. They're like, don't want us now, we'll come. They do know their names. They're extremely intelligent, extremely easy to train. I have girls that come in, I call it secret feeding when I need to put weight on them, and they know where to stand at what time to get let into their area. And they know they're queens and nobody else is coming. And they let them know. It's like, you don't have a ticket for this pin.
Stacie, you know what? You could you could also talk a little more about the processing and that value chain that you're so deeply involved in.
Oh my gosh. So
I know it's a big topic.
The last 6 years, I have been immersed in the commercial in processing alpaca. And if you ever want to have fun, talk to some of these large spinners and mention alpaca. They're like, wow, we don't spin that. And so I've spent the last 6 years talking them into it. The other thing, the commercial wool, there's a scour, and then they put it in top form, which is the first step of spinning yarn. With alpaca, we have to get washed at one place. We go to another place to be carded into slider, and then we go to the spinning mill, where we usually mirror up either cotton and alpaca or cotton and wool. What else? It's hard. Every time I go to do a new project with alpaca in it, when we're knitting something, when we're weaving something, it's all a challenge in patience and negotiating skills. It's like, you can do this. I know you can do it. And I was just sharing our t-shirts. This has been a 6-year project on the commercial end of making fabric that then we cut and sew into natural wool. It was when we went to knit the fabric, we had to have another negotiation because the yarn was breaking. And it's like, what can we do? Can we steam it? Can we do a double wax? What can we do to make that fiber behave the way that we want it to, or the yarn? And so as we onshore, and we are working with these different entities, it is a complete collaboration between the spinning mill and the knitter, because the knitters want to throw their hands in the air and say, we can't use this, let's bring in Italian yarn. And then I come in and I say, what if we slow down the machine, or maybe it's got a little too much tension, and you have to do it also delicately because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and we all want to be successful. And so the t-shirt is a great example of, we can't do this. We applied the steam. I didn't hear from anyone. We were supposed to have this big conference call. And then all of a sudden I got a call that said, where are we shipping this? The fabric's done. And it was like Christmas, because I had had 10 days of mistakes and we can't do this. So it's the little celebration. What else?
No, we were saying this happens to us. We both
Oh, you want to have fun? Go to a dye house in this country? No one's here, right? I don't want to get in trouble. Go to a dye house and mention natural dye. Because this is my latest, and I actually have a dye house that is GOT certified, and who's willing to try. And just having the willingness to run those natural dyes and explain that we all know there's crocking. We know it's not going to be consistent. We're going to put that on the label. We're going to explain it. We're going to pre-sell it that way. And so it's been an exercise in patience, and I'm sorry to say a lot of tequila, and some sleepless nights. But it's starting to come together. And I'm going to say it one more time. This is my dream. I get to work in natural fibers, I get to work with ranchers, I get to work with brands, I get to be that conduit that brings us all together. And I also like to say that make sure that your grandchildren and your children's grandchildren have food, shelter, and clothing made from natural materials. And so this is a dream. I'm so glad to be here. It made my horrible flight worth it.
Does anyone have questions for Stacie?
Does shearing happen at the same time globally?
We do shear the same time. We shear in late April, early May. We make our shearing appointments in December, at the end of winter. In December, the phone starts ringing. I like to tell the story. I'm a consolidator of fiber, and when the shearers start calling, all the ranchers start calling and saying, I've got fiber in there. All of a sudden, they want to move it. And so we do shear. I shear my sheep about 3 weeks earlier, so more at the beginning of April. In Oregon, we still do get some light frost, and I think the sheep are fine. It's more me. I don't want them to have goosebumps.
And are you sorting the fiber before internally, or is someone doing that for you? Like taking out the baby alpaca?
We have certified sorters, but I also, because I've cut so much fiber, and I'm the one they call in when they're trying to decide if it's a grade 1 or a grade 2, if it's baby alpaca or a royal alpaca. Baby alpaca does not come from babies. Does everybody know that? Baby alpaca is a grade of fiber. And so actually most of the animals you see here are what we call royal alpaca, which is 18 micron and under. Almost pretty closely. I hate to compare it to cashmere because each fiber is a little bit different, but the fineness and the softness is there and comparable.
Also, Dana, at Little Creek, I've come and participated in braiding and mailing events. So, maybe Lynn would be open to that.
Dirty.
Yeah, it's you're moving fiber around, but you learn a lot because you can stand next to a professional grader, as Stacie mentioned, and you can learn, as a designer, it's really important for us to know these things, moving forward, so we can make better decisions. So I would recommend it.
We do. We grade both here and in upstate, and then, well, at every ranch. We grade and we follow what sheep ranchers do. We actually grade at the time of shearing, and we're baling our fiber to get it out as fast as we can into processing.
Right? Oh, and back up you see. Yes.
What is the dye house that you said that you're going
Oh, you'll have to tie me up. I'll give you my card. He is, I'm supposed to go and source the actual dyes and he'll try it. He is actually a cotton fiber dyer for interior design. He works with Hyper Restoration Hardware. And so he doesn't really dye. We were one of the first companies that he dyed yarn with. And so this is a whole new adventure. And I just found out recently that he packaged dyes. Prior to package dye, we were stuck with these kettle sizes that were 15 pounds, 150, 300, up to 1,200. Well, he'll do 30, 60, 90. And that's a big deal. Is I'm trying to bring brands in and get them to use our fibers if they want them packaged dye. I know that what's her name? Winona.
Winona from
Green Matters. Green Matters has kind of moved away from dyeing yarn. She's more on Keystone, I think, actually closer. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Is it more viable to run an alpaca farm without having to process meat from a farmer perspective than a sheep?
The biggest difference, alpacas are really, they were brought to this country as a no-kill livestock, and I've done both ends of it. The hang weights aren't there. It takes them a long time to get them to that maturity that like we see in sheep. And so from an economic standpoint, what it costs to process and what we can sell the meat for, I don't know that it's sustainable. So no, because what we do is a lot of us work together, and I'm the yarn fiber, and then it goes to the rug fiber, and then it goes to the drywall fiber, and we kind of move the fiber animals around. I think you'll agree with me, Lita.
Exactly.
Lita is also an alpaca rancher here in
Yorktown Heights.
So, yeah. So a little bit, the economics aren't there. Wonderful meat, I'm sorry to say. It's beautiful, very high in protein, very little fat, probably one of the most perfect protein sources. It's in my freezer. I like to know where my food comes from. Don't we all? Any more questions? We're going back. We're going to under the tree.